Welcome to the Italian Wine Podcast. This episode is brought to you by Vinitaly International Wine and Spirits Exhibition. The 54th edition of Vinitaly will be held from the 10th to the 13th of April, right here in Verona. To discover more about Vinitaly and get your tickets, visit vinitaly.com. This year, the Italian Wine Podcast will be live and in person in Pavilion 6, Stand A7. So come on down and say hello.
Hello, everybody. My name is Polly Hammond, and you are listening to Uncorked, the Italian wine podcast series about all things marketing and communication. Join me each week for candid conversations with experts from within and beyond the wine world as we explore what it takes to build a profitable business in today's constantly shifting environment. With a growing list of communication channels available to us and a shift in at-home experiences, what does PR even mean these days? In today's episode, we talk to Lyndsay Dyk, a Portland-based publicist who specializes in wine and food PR. She'll give us the skinny on everything from influencers to Instagram to radio to events, with some passionate millennial pleas thrown in for good measure. Let's get into it. Lyndsay, welcome. I am so pleased to have you here joining me today. You are part of my unofficial series that's called Ask the Millennial. And I have many, many questions for you.
I'm so happy to be here.
So, Lyndsay, you are the founder of a PR agency that works on the West Coast of the U.S., and you focus specifically on food, wine, travel, and really like the lifestyle adjacent products, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Field Day PR does all of that. And really the connecting thread is any product or brand or person creating an experience that has a strong sense of place. So I like working with agricultural products and experiences and restaurants that connect back to the land and the environment.
Why? I mean, why the sense of place? Why terroir really as a part of a marketing niche?
Yes, I will. After when I started to launch Field Day, I was asking myself, like, what is it about this PR niche that really draws me in? Because my bread and butter is in wine, and the wine industry here in the Pacific Northwest really is my home industry. But I love working with people that bring that same sense of sense of place and terroir into other aspects of food and beverage. So maybe it's a chef who is connected to wine and bringing that as well. I just think sense of place is a great motivator and a great storytelling device for people making and doing things in food and beverage.
So, one of the things that I notice working in digital marketing is that sometimes for me, PR feels like a really amorphous or ever-changing space. It's probably like people call themselves marketers and maybe they do social media or maybe they do some sort of photography and videography, so just very, just help us understand what is encapsulated in PR today with all the different ways that we communicate.
Oh man, that's a great question. I'm going to answer that question with a little story about me and how I kind of found my way into the vocation, because I think, when I have a degree in English literature and creative writing, and growing up, my parents would be like, well, you should be a lawyer because you like asking hard questions, or you should be a journalist because, you love to write. And there were all these career paths, doctor, whatever, that took many, many years. And I've always been interested just in how people tick and how things work. And I love asking those questions. And I feel like PR itself, like a good publicist, is extremely curious person. And those things that make a good writer or a good interviewer or a good communicator in general really fuel a strong PR strategy and a strong kind of gut sense of how public relations work. So when it comes to PR now and what it encapsulates, I mean, this is connecting your wine brand, say, with writers and freelancers and editors throughout the U.S. and beyond. I mean, I'm very U.S. based, so that's coming from the work that I do, but it also looks like helping someone work on their internal communication strategy. So what I'm talking about to these external folks out here is also reflected back in the owned media as well. And it also looks like collaborating with your social marketing team to make sure that that social presence is strong, and all the work that I'm doing out here to bring people to your story, you're retaining them on the social front. And that can look on my end like reaching out to influencers and creating events and parties and different webinars and things that really draw people in, both media and consumer.
So some of those IRL or analog experiences that maybe we haven't had for a little while and we're all looking forward to getting back to. I mean, do you feel like in the past 2 years, you've become really good at messaging and communicating virtual experiences? And, Polly, I think one of the challenges with wine, and this is a bit of an unintentional segue, is that we try to communicate something that tastes. I always say that if I could communicate how something tastes across digital or social media, I would have just solved wine's biggest problem. So how do you, how do you develop that messaging? How do you work with a brand to take what is this glorious, tangible product that really how it tastes is the thing that keeps us coming back, and get new audiences interested or reactivate audiences who maybe have not been a part of events and experiences for 2 years?
That's a good multifaceted question, Polly. So many layers.
Answer any part of that you want.
I think when it comes to the virtual space, I know personally when COVID-19 hit in March 2020 and things began shutting down, I felt that on a personal level, that gut punch of like, oh, these hopes, the way that I know PR is done, going to desk sides in New York City, entertaining at media dinners in Portland or other cities I traveled to, showing up at industry events around in major markets, add in here, that was all gone. And so I started to feel extremely anxious of like, how can I continue to make those relationships and connect with people? And I think it on the public relations side of things, the pandemic kind of caused us all to sit back and ask ourselves, like, what is our value add to the industry if we don't have these tactile in-person relationships? And I think the lesson I got out of it is that sliding into DMs with a well-researched and really relationship-driven mention or request, or just saying hi, that you can do those relationships happen virtually, and they're just as important. And I feel like I have, from the last 2 years, even just really meaningful connections with writers and journalists, because I care about people, and like it makes my job better to know that so-and-so over here like has kids that weren't able to be vaccinated for medical reasons, and I check in with her how that's going, and I really care about that. So I feel like those relationships have really grown and been great in that virtual sphere. So that answers one of your questions.
You have worked in much larger agencies before you established Field Day PR. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like that being, a small team or being a one-man band really is an added benefit to the wineries that you work with, because you can know them, you can tell their stories, you can sit in those spaces for them and really represent them well?
That's a good question. Yes. I mean, I think my first experience in PR was in book publishing, and where I worked in-house for a publisher that made books about the natural world, gardening, science. And I loved the aspect of really owning everything I was talking about, because I was in-house. And so I feel like now my work as an independent boutique agency, I get to take that kind of ownership and kind of like passion and enthusiasm, which is, I think, something that any PR company really needs to bring. They need to be a cheerleader for that brand or chef or winemaker. And I can bring all of that into this one winery space or this one winemaker, talk about their wine. And at the same time, on the writer side of things, I have several of these relationships that I'm either working with directly, or they're friends in the community, or they're people that are making wine that I want to see succeed. And so when someone reaches out to me from Imbibe and they're looking for wines to sample for an aromatic white, kind of what's happening in Oregon with those varieties, I can be like, oh, here's my client. Also, I have this person that I don't work with them, but they're doing some really cool stuff and they're a great fit. So I feel like there's a strong community aspect, especially here in Oregon, that all boats rise.
Okay. So if we're talking about the common channels of PR right now, or of any kind of messaging, we have traditional or print media. So old school. We've got organic social, and we've got paid social. What am I missing?
I think within traditional media, there's several more pockets that are important depending on your market and your goals. So broadcast, I think on a regional level, is extremely important for restaurants and wineries and beyond. And then podcasts as well. I would say, like, when I'm talking to a client, I'm spending less time talking about one-off blogs or things that really mattered earlier in the teens or in the aughts. And now I'm focusing on podcasts and on broadcast and online outlets and print as well. But it just depends on what the goals are.
Super interesting. So I didn't realize that broadcast was still really an active channel for PR. I guess because I live so much in a digital space that's an eye opener for me. How do you, because, okay, just disclosure, you and I have worked as part of a team in the past where By Forest is on the digital marketing side and you're on the PR side, and we have our client as well. So how do you actually bring all of these omni-channel communications together in a way that is consistent and succinct across multiple divergent channels?
That's a really good question. And I think it's one that I'm always trying to optimize under a single umbrella strategy. And that's certainly always the goal. But in my work, I always leave room for, again, that kind of organic connection. Maybe something's popping up in podcast world or on Twitter for food writer Twitter or something like that, that is kind of outside of that multi-channel strategy. And I'm going to also jump on that because I feel like one picture I always have of myself and this work, and maybe this is, really announcing that I grew up in the 90s, but is from the 101 Dalmatians, where I feel like there's one point where all the puppies are running through the snow and they're leaving all their paw prints and everything. And then Pongo goes back and like has a little branch in his mouth and wipes up all the tracks. And so I feel like
I love that.
So yeah, hang with me. If there's 101 puppies are all of our channels and they're all moving forward, and it's like, okay, we have this strategy and it's moving forward, great. But there's also the publicist also needs to be on the back end of that, kind of sweeping everything up, making sure that no leads have dropped off and there isn't any other potential channel or crossover content area that I've missed that could potentially be explored.
So really kind of holding that form, like that, being the guardian of that space, because I know that brands can be very enthused by shiny things or very involved in the day-to-day must happen, but there has to be someone who's caring for the space and the overarching strategy. So that's really where you sit in that pyramid of work.
Yeah, definitely. And I think to that point, something that the last 2.5 years really has underlined for me is that it's important we can set our strategy. And I'm listening to the brand leaders and the stakeholders, and I'm trying to bring in where the news cycle as close to their goals as possible. And at the same time, it's important for me as an outside voice to remind them and keep them true to both their brand, but also like the goals they have, whether it's like sustainability, diversity, equity. These are things that are meaningful, especially to millennial and Gen Z consumers like myself. And so I feel like I think when I first started, I didn't realize that to do PR work and to really be a value add, you need a strong gut sense of what is right and what is wrong. And you really want to lean in that to be a voice of reason and protection almost for your clients, so you can help them navigate that space and make good choices that are also real choices. Like, I think as a publicist, sometimes people think, oh, a PR campaign, it's like it's made up, or it's like shiny stuff, like you said, it's not real. And I think going back to my branding around that sense of place and terroir, I think why that speaks to me is that if I'm talking about something, I want it to be 100% authentic. It doesn't need to be precious. It doesn't need to be like, I don't know. It just needs to be truly real, so that writers and the media folks know that I'm a trustable source. And also so I know that the stakeholders and the brands I'm working with are headed in a strong direction that they can build on for years to come.
You have introduced so many topics that I want to talk about. Millennials and Gen Z. I've decided from now on, I'm calling all of you sub-Gen Xers. We Gen X do not get enough props in the world, and you're all younger than us. And so instead of sub 40, sub 35, millennials and Gen Z, you know what? You're all just sub Xers. So, all right. Are the younger generations, are you killing the wine industry?
I think that we're making it better.
Oh, please share. Why the shade, man? Why everybody's saying that millennials are killing the wine industry? You're one of them. You work in wine. Kick it down.
Amazing. No, I mean, I think I was drawn to wine because of its potential for storytelling and its center on the community table. And it's there's so many reasons we could go on about that forever. And so certainly I don't want to come across as like, oh, I'm someone who's going to disrupt the industry, or like I don't like what anyone's ever done, because there's generations of people that have been working on perfecting this thing for a long time, and it's a big river, and I'm just part of that. So with that being said, I
that
think
in itself, that answer in itself is so indicative of a lot of the difference that we see working in wine between the older than Gen Xers and the younger than Gen Xers, is that notion of, you know what? It's collaborative. I'm part of a flow. There are people who've come before me. There are people who will come after me. I'm not the be all end all, because boomers got a bit of ego.
We can all agree on that. Yeah. And I think they have an ego.
So you're not killing the wine industry.
No, I was thinking a lot about this, and I was texting some of my friends who also share various age demographics with me about what it is, what they think about wine, and how like their approach to wine affects their buying habits. And I feel like at the end of the day, we're not killing the wine industry, but we're asking questions that, again, didn't apply maybe to the Robert Parker generation, where it's about, I feel like we still want luxury, and we want luxury experiences, but it's 2022, it's not 1922. So that luxury has to come with the other realistic truths about our world. Climate change is real. worker safety is paramount and worker equity. And we're coming with an understanding that we can't scale a product just for scaling it and live a good life. And I think that expectation goes from our work and into kind of everything we consume. And again, grain of salt, I'm talking to you from Portland, Oregon, which I think has a really specific, this is very much like our cultural approach in general. So grain of salt there as well.
Well, I don't know that we have to add too much of a grain of salt because it ties in with all of the qualitative data that we're accumulating around, sub-Gen Xers. Some interesting things, though, that I'd love your take on. What factors actually influence their spending? Not just their answers, but like genuinely. And the example of that we see is, are younger drinkers really willing to pay more or accept variety in quality and experience for something that is sustainable or meets a value system?
That's a good question. I think so. I mean, on one hand, if you walk into any of the hot wine bars in Portland right now on a Wednesday night, like it's going to be full of people buying full bottles or like tasting their way through whatever's on glass pour right now and walking away spending $100 plus gratuity at the end of the night. Like I think that experience is happening, and it's people in their 20s and 30s with disposable income that are really pushing that. Again, the hot wine bars in Portland are wine bars that they're falling under the umbrella of natural wine to an exclusive point. Like maybe it's just natural wine, and they will have Oregon or American offerings, and they are connecting to that, but they have offerings from Europe and other regions as well.
And so why natural wine? What's the appeal?
It's pretty.
It's pretty.
I do think it is. What I mean by that is that there's natural wine almost is like a prism, I think, especially to people who don't have years in the industry or are coming with any kind of certification or knowledge background, because like a producer might change their label based on the way they're feeling, or they might have so many SKUs and so many labels that I feel like the graphic design element is huge, where it's the natural wine space is graphically designed to be a bit obscure, and there's almost like I don't know if there's a nihilism in it, but there is a sense of like it's impenetrable, so might as well just taste through it all and see what you like. That industry has done a wonderful job of making it about like that anyone can come to the table and what you like is important, and at the same time there is like a destination that we're aiming for, that as you taste through it, you like get closer to, you get a palate for and more experience with. So I haven't, I've thought a lot about this, and I have a lot of conversations about this, but I haven't had to really talk about it on a podcast before. So I hope I'm getting close.
Okay, we're working through it together. Okay, so we've talked about this notion that storytelling is really important, and that messaging is really important, and that authenticity is really important. How do we balance authenticity with segmentation? So that if I have a product that appeals to innumerable generations, it's not like I'm saying one thing to sub-Gen Xers and another thing to boomers. Like, how do you deal with that as the storyteller for brands?
When you are looking at your multiple channels, it's really important to run the diagnostics on the demographics and see who is looking at what, because I mean, that's one reason that regional broadcast is important, because if you want boomers and Gen Xers and whatnot to be at an event, then you're probably have a higher likelihood of reaching people who will see that on the news, and that will shift them to become consumers, or that will push them to the event and get butts and seats. Like that is just something I've seen happen over and over again. And at the same time, on Instagram, you want to have a link to the event in your bio. You need to be posting stories about the event there at a rate that is not overwhelming, but also make sure that people don't forget about you. So I think that part of the answer is you do have different messaging, and you put that out through different channels, but it shouldn't, the tone of the messaging maybe shouldn't change. Like you shouldn't be like on TikTok, I think, as a brand being like, we're doing like TikTok trends, and then at the same time talking to your 50, 60 plus consumers, like, oh, those people, like the young people, or I don't know. I feel like there's a way to be inclusive about it. And it's really important to audit all your channels to make sure that at the end of the day, that messaging is the same. I have a question then for you that I'm thinking about, maybe it can be for both of us, which is like, I'm wondering, can you bring the messaging that that I feel like millennials want, which is a strong story, a strong sense of environmental protection, a strong sense of diversity and equity, but also like self-knowledge. These are all things that I think millennials want in a wine product. And can you lead with these to another generation and still find sales? I certainly think so with the brands that I work with and the wines that I work with. So I guess I answered my question.
Are you seeing a lot of brands move toward purposeful or purpose-driven communications messaging?
Yes, I think so. And I think, the brands that started this before 2020, even dipping their toe in kind of aligning their product with a mission or a mission-driven outlook, I think have a big head start because they have a foundation they've already laid. But I think all brands across the wine industry are finding that this is something that they're being called to the table to speak to. At the same time, if there's nothing there like that's truly newsworthy or is really moving the organization in a different direction, or if no one is internally addressing equity, or if no one is internally addressing worker safety and compensation, then there's no point in communicating that to the consumer audience. And so I feel like if you have the mission, then you need to be communicating it. I've talked to some, and this happens with smaller brands, especially, who are people that they're making their wine. It's a small team, or it's just them, and they're like, well, I give back a portion of my proceeds to this diversity movement in wine organization, or a portion of my proceeds to this environmental organization. But I don't want to cheapen that by talking about it. And talking about it is so important. And there are ways to do that that are communicating to your people who are either already your consumers or going to be, that this is important to the core of your brand. That is something that is about communication, and it's not about ego, and it doesn't cheapen the work you're doing. It's more of like a clarion call, and that is vital to do. And on the flip side, I would say that brands that either don't have the bandwidth, it's like figure out how you can get the bandwidth to do this authentically and bring in a consultant, or this is something that we work with in PR all the time, because if we're going to be speaking about this and drafting these pitches, then we want to make sure that the data is there, that the numbers are there, and the relationships are there and they're strong. So that's something that I work with brands on and help with explicitly as well. But it's better at the end of the day to not post anything that it is not true to who you are as a team.
So something I really really want to talk about, because I have worked in a team with you and watched you do this. You do a lot of work around influencers.
Mhm.
Oh my God. I get so many questions. I mean, we did a whole Real Business of Wine a couple years ago that was all about influencer marketing. And I see brands make bad decisions, get taken advantage of, have unrealistic expectations around it. So here's an opportunity. Give us kind of like the masterclass in a matter of minutes on influencer marketing. How does it work? How do you do it right? Can you do it yourself? Do you need to call Lyndsay? Let's hear it.
Well, you have to pay for the master class, but I can give you some basics that I think
Nice.
are a good way to get started. Yeah, it's extremely vital, not only for public awareness and driving social media users to your site, your story, your product. It's important because you're also getting free or collaborative content on some level from users outside of your main stakeholders, and this opens up like a diversity of views on your product, what it looks like. If you are headquartered here in Oregon making wine, it means we can work with people in Texas, in Boston, and Chicago, and key markets that want Oregon wine. And we're working with people that are boots on the ground there, have an innate understanding of the community, and are really enthusiastic because, yeah, there's some cutthroat, fakey influencers out there, but there's not that many of them. Most of them are really enthusiastic people who really care about the industry and are doing this because I don't know where they get the energy. It's so much work. So I think like the takeaway is every time you read a hot take on, influencers in wine, know that influencer that's, getting, blasted on Maine, like they are doing so much work to do what they do and be involved. So I think it's important to know what you want out of it before you engage with the influencer. So ask yourself, ask your team, are we looking for content? Are we looking for an ongoing relationship? Are we looking for someone to help promote an event or a new item? These are all important questions because the closer you can define the parameter of that ask when you slide into their DMs, the better your results will be. Because there are things you can and can't ask for depending on what you want and how much you want to pay. Because at the end of the day, it's best to treat influencers like writers, like traditional media connectors, because that is what they're doing. There's an opportunity to pay folks, and when you pay them in some kind of collaboration, then you get to ask for more data if data is what you want. But just kind of starting that relationship. Hey, I see what you're doing. I really like it. Here's our wine. I'd love for you to try it. And then let your product do the talking. If you have the research up front, follow their stuff, like their posts. Like it's all a reciprocal relationship.
So what's really interesting for me to hear you say is treat them like writers, because in my head, I would have thought it would have been treat them like advertisers, but it's not, right? So that's really interesting, is that we need to be looking at them as an arm of a communication strategy, not an arm of an advertising strategy.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's so my tier of outreach is always kind of a writer style of outreach first. And then I let the influencers lead me where they want to go. And if that is deeper into advertising, because that's where their content is going, great. I'm open to talking about it. I might not push that forward because it's not what my client wants, but it's just kind of letting the influencers lead. And then that also, because if you get in there and push someone to be like to communicate your points, your brand points, your visuals, you're going to lose that creativity from them, and you're going to lose that reciprocal relationship and the ability to go back to them in the future.
Wow, that was good masterclass information. I really appreciate that. Are there any channels that you're finding work best? So obviously Instagram being the big one, but we're seeing a big drive toward YouTube and of course, I mean, TikTok. So what works? Do they all work equally well depending upon your audience?
Well, first I need to out myself as I do have a TikTok, but I've only made one TikTok and it's about the chickens that I own in my backyard. So I get most of my TikTok knowledge and news through Instagram. So there's that. But I am studying the form. I'm in the conversation, and yeah, I think they all matter and they all have different impacts. It just goes back to the core principle of asking you and your team, what are our goals? What do we have time for? Because I think another part of my job is to come in and work with you to evaluate what your team can actually do. Because it's important for me to make sure that we're going to have the energy to keep pushing these things forward in 2 months, in 6 months, in a year. If you bring me onto the team, I could create lots of homework for you, and we could chase every lead. But I'm very aware, just in my own life and in what I want from my work-life balance, that you can't go 120% the whole time. So we got to figure out what matters and push that.
I actually love that you said that because that's something that we see with clients all the time too, is that I sit there and I'm like, okay, I can easily just sit at my desk and give you lots and lots of things to do. But what do we have sustainable efforts for? Because that's what you've just alluded to, right? This isn't one off. You're not going to pay for one Instagram post and blow up your business. This is part of a sustainable communication and marketing effort.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And
yeah.
maybe
that's Lyndsay shaking her head.
Yeah. I'm saying, yes, girl. Yeah, you have to evaluate who's on your team. Maybe you have someone that is a creative powerhouse, and we can advise on some creative viral campaigns or that have the potential to go viral. Or maybe that's not y'all, but you have a beautiful estate vineyard that's just begging to be shot in every lighting. And there's ways to do it. And even with TikTok, I mean, my advice there is that if you have as niche as you can go, like TikTok has the space for that. So of course there's the I was talking to a brand manager friend of mine who runs, she was working on a TikTok outlet for a non-alcoholic drinks brand. And she was telling me how she was getting some really great traction from running their TikTok channel and getting some viral hits. But the workload of doing that was so extreme that all the other channels suffered. And did it really convert users into customers? It didn't. So she was getting really a lot of creative success, but it was kind of driving her into the ground and was ultimately something that they had to let go of. So it's always, I think, even the success of engagement doesn't always translate to the purchases or your bottom line.
Yeah, and that is a difficult thing when we're working, especially in the space where we've got brand managers or we've got corporate overlords who want those short-term gains. They want the monthly results. They want how much did this sell, instead of seeing all of these efforts as part of a long-term brand growth and awareness strategy. So, you'll be looking, just like I sit around and look at websites all the time, you'll be looking at lots of campaigns that are out in the world. Are there any examples of brands who are absolutely nailing multi-generational messaging?
That is a great question. I feel like this is a client of mine, so I'm biased. But I think if you look at what's happening with Soder Vineyards, with their marketing channels on their Instagram, I know that their demographic runs the gamut of generations actively purchasing wine right now. And they have a really strong sense of style that encapsulates their brand and their offerings, and they know what they love and they know what they do well, and they don't waver from speaking to that. And I think, I walk into almost any market or wine shop in Portland, and I hear folks, again, of all demographics asking for their wine. So it's finding a strong storyteller. It's figuring out what you know really well. And, it's also bringing in support. So, not to post more than 5 times in one day. You should really be posting 2 to 3 times a week. That's a nice sweet spot.
Next question. How important is it for these brands, like the ones that you're discussing, to have younger staff members and to give them some agency?
Yes. Oh, girl. This is something I feel very passionate about, because I think if we're talking about what millennials want when they're buying luxury everyday products, it also crosses over into like, what do they want in the workforce? And I can tell you, they want agency, they want respect, they want room to try things out, and the knowledge that when some of those things are trying fails, that you have their back, and it's on to the next thing. I think that there's a strong desire for that. And if you bring folks onto your team and you give them that space, as well as a clear path of growth, because we're very, I think, driven overall and growth minded, then you're going to have people that will ride very hard for your brand.
I've stood on stage. I've answered the question, how do we sell wine to millennials? And I don't know. I just look at it and I think that wine forgets that there are so many of you who work in our space. I interviewed a bar owner, so award-winning wine bar owner who's 26, who has an absolutely kick-ass business full of multi-generational drinkers. We've got someone like Pauline Vickard, who I refer to often, that I think we all forget that she is generationally a millennial, even though she's, partway through her MW studies. Yeah. I mean, I'd love to be able to pass this buck to you and to all of you, and to let you answer these questions and stand on stage.
It's true. I mean, I don't know why people of this demographic you're speaking of are still driven to, post on their blogs what they hate about wine influencers or millennial buyers or bad experiences they've had. I think there's enough wine in the world for everyone to have what they like. And if there's any takeaway from that I learned from sitting at wine bars and restaurants around the country for the last several years, it's that you get to drink what you like.
That is a perfect conclusion. Thank you, Lyndsay. I really appreciate you coming on. One thing that I love, and I'll just kind of scoot this in to the convo, is that all brands, it's not just wine, all brands are made up of people kind of like you and I, who sit quietly in the background and do our work. I mean, I'm not quiet because I got this podcast, but normally I'm quiet, right? We sit quietly in the background, and all these almost like introverts who are making all of our clients look and sound and communicate well. But we're really quite quiet people. I know for you, coming onto a podcast is a little bit out of the box, despite the fact that you get so many of your clients onto podcast all across the industry. So thank you for letting us kind of pull you out of the introvert box to ask you some questions. Now, you have made an offer that I love and adore. You're actually the first person who's been on my podcast to do this, which is you like talking to people. You like answering questions. And you've said that if anyone has any questions for you, that they can reach out to you, preferably by DM on your Instagram account, which is Field Day PR. And that they can find you online at fielddaypr.com. What I would say is, if people want to ask you questions, don't ask for the free masterclass. Pay her for her work. So, thank you. I really appreciate your time, Lyndsay.
Oh, thanks for this opportunity.
And that's a wrap for this episode of the Italian Wine Podcast. Thank you for listening. And thank you, Lyndsay, for joining us today. The Italian Wine Podcast is among the leading wine podcasts in the world and the only one with daily episodes. Tune in each day and discover all our different shows. And be sure to join us next Sunday for another look at the world of wine marketing.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Italian Wine Podcast, brought to you by Vinitaly International Wine and Spirits Exhibition, the biggest drinks trade fair in the world. For more information about Vinitaly and tickets, visit vinitaly.com, and remember to subscribe to Italian Wine Podcast and catch us on SoundCloud, Spotify, and wherever you get your pods. You can also find us at italianwinepodcast.com.
Hi guys, I'm Joy Livingston and I am the producer of the Italian Wine Podcast. Thank you for listening. We are the only wine podcast that has been doing a daily show since the pandemic began. This is a labor of love and we are committed to bringing you free content every day. Of course, this takes time and effort, not to mention the cost of equipment, production, and editing. We would be grateful for your donations, suggestions, requests, and ideas. For more information on how to get in touch, go to italianwinepodcast.com.